Yes. Hello, we're just finishing setting up. Nearly there. Hello, welcome to everybody who's with us watching live. We will make this video available afterwards and keep it on our channel. And it's a great pleasure to have with me today my friend Martyn Lee from EV News Daily. And we'll do a bit of a run through in a moment. I think kind of justify what qualifies us to talk about electric vehicles. We're going to proclaim ourselves as UK experts in this. But what's prompted this video, and I do want to make a sort of habit of doing a few more live sessions, maybe not quite weekly but bi-weekly, and have a different topic each week. This session here, I really want to cover some of the basics of the talking points of electric vehicles, and mainly address some of these criticisms that we still see. We still see them in the news, on press, and stories of people struggling with EVs, concerned with EVs, just still doubting electric vehicles. So we've taken quite a number of questions. I've got a little list here from a number of people that I've taken over the last few days. And I guess these are mainly items that we commonly address anyway. I mean, my primary business here is selling cars, and obviously these are electric vehicles. So these are fairly common questions to us. And I want to address these so that people who are curious, people who are concerned, people that love them, and people that read these stories in some of the media, that still scares them off, basically. So I want to address those, basically, and we'll answer as many of these questions as we can. We'll be online live for as long as we can, and we'll answer questions if you put any questions to us. So, tell us a little about yourself, Martyn. What qualifies you to talk about electric cars? I guess at the end of the day.
I'm probably wildly unqualified, but we're up to 945 editions of EV News Daily, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's a podcast and now a YouTube show, which just takes forever to make. For the last 2 or 3 years or so, I've been reporting every single day, 7 days a week sometimes, on EV News.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's just perfect for someone like myself on the commute into work. I listen to Martyn's podcast, and he collates news from all corners of the globe and puts them in a nice daily podcast to listen to. And so it's really informative. I think it's very useful as an enthusiast. I love it, and it's right up to minute. News and topics. And
it's every day. Yeah.
So you're probably more up to date than anybody.
I'm not looking at today's news, but no, it's so good to be here and to talk to you guys, Richard. And well, you can see this amazing facility that we are in front of right now, and it just looks fantastic. We are, we're both local. I live just the other side of Bournemouth, and funnily enough, one of our friends lives a few doors up from where Richard used to be based, and I can tell you, it didn't look like this. So I've been driving past your place for years now, just seen it grow, of course, and seeing EVs and thinking, I should pop in there, and I'd like to buy one. That was years ago, and now here we are.
And how long have you had? You've had an electric car yourself?
Yeah.
When I was there now, how long have you into electric cars now?
So on to our second Zoe. Probably a few years. More interested in them than I've owned them, actually. But we obviously never go back. Once you do, you never go back. And always try and remind myself about that new experience. So we talked to someone recently, and they're asking, where do I plug in?
Yeah.
And even then, I came over today to see Richard and stopped because I've never used a network from called Osprey, and they have done a deal with my electric provider. Yeah. So I've got a car that I can wave, and it adds it to my home and let me build with Octopus. I haven't tried it yet, so I'll give that a go. And even then, on a new charging unit, even though I'm thinking, okay, this is new, so I do this and I touch that, and in a small way have that experience that all new EV owners have, which is, what on earth do I do now? Where do I plug? Well, I've got 3 plugs. what do I do? How do I start it? So always try to remind myself that everybody comes to this new, and some people have been doing it years, and some people are about to buy their first EV. There's a little Zoe there. So whether it's a Zoe, you can't quite see the Peugeot, but there's the E208. So whatever you're going to buy, everyone plugs in for the first time. So that new experience is really, I think it's really crucial and really key as well.
I think that's one of the main things I want to kind of address here is just those kind of concerns, because at the end of the day, I think they're actually more convenient than a combustion car. I think the concerns people talk to me about are very easily addressed, and we'll also talk about the path forward. Of course, there's very publicly announced the 2030 deadline as well for the kind of end of production for sales of combustion engine vehicles. And a bit about myself, anyone who knows me, my name is Richard Symons. This is my company, Symons Limited. For me, it's a hobby that's turned into a living. I come at this as being a car enthusiast. I think you're not too dissimilar, Martin, but I'm a car enthusiast who now does drive an electric car, and I love electric cars. So even as a petrol head, TVRs, BMW M5s, all in my catalogue beforehand. My degree was in design. I worked in software implementation development, so about looking at new, improving things basically, making things better, and my passions for cars. So I think if you merge with those, that's why I do what I do here today, which is my hobby. I play with cars all day. I'm lucky enough that's translated into mainly Teslas. I drive a Tesla myself now, fortunately, and I love them. So petrol head, enthusiast, love electric cars. Of course, the longest journey, I spend most of my days, a lot of my days talking to people with a lot of the same questions that have just been asked as part of this show. So hopefully we can come up with some good information, some good constructive answers. I'll happily address a criticism, a question, a concern, anything you've got. So we'll work through what we can at the time we have today.
Yeah.
So I think as part of this, before we actually get into answering some of the specific questions, I think we need to, this is totally unscripted, by the way. We've made sure this is unscripted. I've literally just got a list of a few questions. This is all on the fly. I think it's important first to probably clarify what electric cars are. There's different categories. So I think some people are maybe now going, well, what's a mild hybrid? What's a self-charging hybrid? Self-charging hybrids are a hot topic, so we'll cover that. Then we have our plug-in hybrids, and then we have pure electric vehicles. So I think we should just explain a little bit about which one each is. Now, let's start with the contentious issue of a self-charging hybrid. So here we'll be talking about Toyota Prius and Lexus products predominantly. There's more of these coming out now. Nissan Juke, that's what we call a mild hybrid. So you put petrol in the thing basically, and there's no plug socket. So that's the first category, what I'd refer to as a mild hybrid.
Yeah.
And there's no plug socket. It has a hybrid badge on it, and some classify them as electric cars. But there is no plug socket. So you're fairly vocal. What do you think about the term self-charging hybrid?
So I think they shouldn't be sold as EVs,
correct?
But they will do a purpose. So here in Europe, we have emissions regulations. This year, they get more stringent from 2021 onwards. And these kind of cars are used by the car makers to reduce emissions, make the cars more efficient. In some cases, make them more fun because you add maybe a combustion engine on the front axle, maybe a rear axle kind of electric motor, or like Audi do tend to put it all into a transmission, and it all goes through one axle. But either way, hybrids can be fantastic fun. Even before you plug them in, they can serve a purpose. They absolutely shouldn't be thought of as an electric car.
I think that's exactly my point as well. I totally agree with you there. Because there's also a lot of people in the sort of plug-in hybrid electric car camp that kind of dismiss them. They get a lot of criticism. And I think for me, again, when I'm at shows, people say, well, what's the point of having a plug-in car? Mine's self-charging. I think using a self-charge is misleading. I do quite agree that they don't, for me, count as electric cars. I have a category on my website, which is electric vehicles and non-electric vehicles. They go in non-electric for me because they don't plug in. And I've got a couple of defensive points, I guess, for the Prius, which might surprise you.
Yeah.
I think they've said a couple of things. I think for what they are, they're fine as long as you're not mis-selling them. I think they have served the purpose. I don't think there's a great future for them now, being self-charging. You still have to put fuel in this. Fundamentally, they still need petrol to drive nearly every mile that they go down the road. But the defensive point I think I would probably put in there is that they have been around a long time now, and we see plenty of Prius, even part showing us through here, which have 500,000 miles on, for example. I think what it has been is a battery technology, drivetrain technology, that they're reliable. They have kind of paved that way into it. And I think as long as people understand what they are, which can be quite an efficient car around town, better than driving a 3-litre diesel Range Rover in the school run, to be fair, or doing taxi work in a 2-litre diesel in town. But as long as they're not missold, and I think that's the trouble with them really, the badge is a self-charging hybrid, and that's a term that we all, I think, disagree with.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because there is an element of trying to pull the wool over people's eyes that they are an electric car. So you can feel good about yourself, you can feel green, you can feel that you're cutting edge, that you're driving technology, and really these cars aren't the 20-year-old technology. And again, I go in pretty much both feet, heavy tackle on my podcast about self-charging hybrids, but honestly, the latest, maybe it's the 4th, 5th generation Prius, it's a nice place to be. Probably if you're in London, every ride hailing or cab company are going to be using them. It's a very pleasant experience. We don't need them anymore because we barely need plug-in hybrids because full EVs can do pretty much everything you want, but they serve a purpose.
Yeah, I think that's it. So they are what they are. They're better than a lot of things. They're the right step in the right direction, but let's not be misconstrued really with what their purpose of the future is. So that brings us on to a hybrid, which is a plug-in hybrid. So a hybrid which has a battery and it can drive off of an electric motor, but it also has a plug socket. So again, 2 camps with this really. One, saves having to stop on long journeys and charge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I guess the downside, the biggest criticism, you still carry around all the petrol engine, all the exhaust, all the gearbox, and the electric drivetrain and the battery. So sort of 2 camps there. And again, I was listening to your podcast last week, and you're kind of, I don't know, are they good? Are they bad? Are they good? Are they bad? I think it's down to application myself. So I think it's again, I guess understanding where they do apply. I think the trouble that I again see with them is they've been taking up a lot of people as company car drivers. Perhaps they've had a lower tax liability and tax band. And people never plug them in. So in which case they just revert to step 1, which is the mild hybrid, basically. And if you don't plug them in, they have a limited use, I think, just to have one that you got because it was less of a benefit in kind for a company car. You never plug it in is a bit of a waste. Again, I'm fairly defensive on plug-in hybrids. What do you think? I'll put my defences up in a minute. Put your criticisms on the table.
We don't need them anymore. Plenty of people never charge them, which is terrible. And I think the problem with plug-in hybrids is they do use, in some cases, kind of second-rate technology in terms of motors aren't quite as good as you get in an EV. The chargers might be kind of 3 kilowatt onboard charger, which if you're plugging into the AC socket of the only rapid charger for miles and somebody pulls up in a pure electric car, desperately needing that 50 kilowatt or more fast charger, and you are trickle charging your plug-in hybrid while you're off shopping for a couple of hours, I think that's where is the downside. And education hasn't happened for various reasons, and there are some amazing drivers and some less good ones that just think, well, I'm plugging in, and so that for me it's about behaviour of how you behave with a plug-in hybrid. If you charge it at home, if you charge it sympathetically when you're out and about on destination chargers and slow charger at the supermarket, plug them in at Tesco's on the new pod points, or when you get to not that we're all going out as much because of COVID, but plug it into those sockets and use them the way they're designed. Pretty good. But again, what I don't miss is, over the years, same as you, I've had a series of cars, some nice cars as well. And the nicer car you get, the bigger the bills. They all start £1,000. And so the amount of times I've had that phone call from the garage, it's like, oh, the injectors need doing, or we could clean them, but best get new ones. And it's time for this and that. And there's so you know, a million things. The last big bill I had was the DSG gearbox on a Golf.
Yeah,
and it's like
DPF filter,
you know, and all that. You're like, okay, I'll go online and look. Like, oh, brilliant! They all go at 100,000 miles, or you know, I know I'm painting with broad brushstrokes, and then you think, oh, that's £1,000. So I just don't miss having that worry of all the oily bits.
Yeah. But
they do a job. It'd be good to hear from you in the comments what you think of plug-in hybrids as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think at the end of the day, it was a plug-in hybrid that got me into electric cars. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. If it does take that step, you think, well, this is interesting. Let's dip my toe in the water. I know I don't have to worry about the long journeys. I can still run a petrol engine, but at least around town, you know, it's all electric. And so that's the point with it. Most of the plug-in hybrids, I mean, let's be realistic, usually between 15 and kind of 30 miles of EV-only range. So they are limited, but that is a lot of people's commutes. I better not say most. It's usually the journey to school, for example. So if that saves an engine running outside the school, brilliant. My wife has a plug-in hybrid, so I didn't tell you this.
For marital bliss.
But this is a case in point. Nearly all journeys are the local journeys and occasional longer journeys, in which case, a bit of petrol gets used. But let me give you some numbers. My wife has a Golf GTE. This GTE, I put 1 tank of fuel in this year.
Wow.
We're talking the whole year.
Wow.
And so it's covered, I think, over 1,000 miles now, and it's into the hundreds of miles per gallon, because it is only occasionally that engine needs to be used. And even then, on a slightly longer journey, at least the first bit is electric, and on the turn, the first bit's electric again. So there is a case, and actually plug-in hybrids, again, can get quite a lot of criticism from electric car owners. I think sometimes a little bit unjustly. I've got an electric car, what are you doing with that? But I think there is a case in point. And the reality is, well, they're more affordable at the moment. You know, you can buy a good plug-in hybrid car for under £10,000. If that's your sole car in a family, and that means you can still drive to Scotland to see your aunt once a year, then okay, you know, some emissions on the motorway where cars there are really a bit more efficient. It's not the emissions in town. At least the engine shouldn't be on outside the school gates, which is, I think, one of the key points, isn't it? So they do have a place, and there's certainly a good stepping stone into electric, I think. And it got me into it. My first electric car was a Vauxhall Ampera. Still love them. And they actually still have the longest electric range really of any other plug-in hybrid I've driven. I mean, I can get 50 miles out of it. In fact, I've got one down there. And we've got one in the company as a courtesy car as well, which I got from Johnny Smith. We still have it, so if you're watching Johnny, still working daily, and with a customer at the moment. So there is an element, but there's of course those downsides, which is mainly carrying anything, servicing. The electric side doesn't really service it, but you've still got that servicing. You probably need an exhaust at some point and such like. So I guess one exception from most of the plug-in hybrids is the BMW i3 with a range extender, but that was predominantly electric car with a deliberately small 10 litre, I think it is. I've never put more than 10 pounds in one. So they sort of cross that bridge then even more, don't they? They don't really quite fit into the normal plug-in hybrid category because it's really an electric car with options to range extend. And then what did BMW do more recently? They got rid of it.
Yes, they're like, you know what, the battery's big enough. We'll get rid of the engine. That's a good thing, you know, because in the US it behaved differently to over here as well. So the engine wouldn't kick in unless the state of charge was, you know, very low. So you couldn't save that state of charge to go into a city and stuff. So around the world, the i3 behaved differently, and it's just good that they've got rid of the engine, you know, completely. And then they had to do stuff like the tank was pressurized and the engine would spin up to, you know, so it doesn't seize up. And so again, all those things, you think, oh, that makes sense from an engineering point of view, but you shouldn't need to do them. But again, like my dad's got one. So my dad has a range extended i3 just because he just wants that security of that comfort blanket of if the battery goes and I'm on petrol, I know that there's a petrol station on every corner. So
and some of those i3s, again, maybe for a lot of people it won't be a sole family car, they're just not big enough, but you know, they are a good range electric car. They're all now same kind of price as a smart Ford Focus. So there are, you know, they're plenty more affordable. I think this is one of the main issues, and we've had questions along these lines where certainly in my mind and Martyn's mind, a full electric car is great. It's simple, is the reality, and they're really nice to drive. I've never driven a bad one yet. I've driven most of them, I think, from Citroen C0s to top range Teslas, and to drive, they're all brilliant. They're all smooth and lovely and quality performance. I've never driven a slow one yet, and they're all pretty good. And this is where we need to try and get to. We need to try and get to electric vehicle. The reality is they are very simple. The downsides, at least with some of them, have been so far affordability and range limitations. And yes, I definitely get at the moment, for some people, there are limitations as to their feasibility. So I'm certainly not going to say, look, let's just take every combustion car on the road here and push it off a cliff and get rid of it. We've all got to have these tomorrow. But this is all about the people buying really new cars. And you can spend over £40,000 on a VW Golf. You can spend £45,000 on 320Ds, BMWs, and you can spend £80,000 on Range Rovers. So there are electric cars which are great alternatives to each one of those, and they are only getting cheaper. So, cell technology, Tesla battery day was amazing. So there's a lot coming through, which is really brings about the argument, which is why wouldn't you? And that's where we've got to get to. So it can't be I won't because of cost. So at the moment there's a little bit of that factor, but actually when the person who's just bought that new Mercedes there, they had a choice, and they probably could have chosen, could be a Tesla Model 3, could be a longer range Nissan Leaf. There's plenty of options out there, isn't there? And so this is where this change has to happen. And the thing that bugs me, the thing that sort of maybe anger's a bit of a strong word, but I get really frustrated with seeing is the people, the comments, and I've had these comments on social media today, it's just dismissive. Not for me, not going to have it, no way, definitely not. I had a comment, definitely not, and I said, well, why not, and I've got a few of these arguments here, so we'll go through some of them in a minute, and they do form, like I was saying, really, probably the bulk of the questions that tend to come up and the bulk of the criticism, and just not helped by like Schmid, Porsche, and we saw the story 2 days ago in the newspapers. It's taken me hours to charge. So this is all about education, not in a patronising way. It's about educating on the reality of where we're at now, what is feasible, and I think too much is just misconceived by the media that they're still too difficult. You can't charge them longer journeys. Yeah, completely. Because we know that fake news and bad news spreads five times faster than good news. That's kind of there's a research principle that over the years they've studied it, and so it's better to say something. If you're after clicks and you have websites and blogs, bad news and fake news is going to generate more revenue, and so there's more of an interest in those kind of stories, and actually a good news story, which is somebody drove 2 hours in an EV. There were no events because they left fully charged and they was charging at their destination. That's not even a story. So, but that is the reality. And so this education job is something that I enjoy on my podcast. I know Richard enjoys with the hundreds of people that come through here now. And this phone is you tell me that your phone rings and someone's calling for advice. You're like, would you like to buy a car? No, but I'd like to know about it. And then you're like, okay. So people call you just because you're a Tesla expert of how do I do this? And you're like, okay, right, I'll help you out then. That's no problem. It really isn't. This is about trying to drive a better future. There's good puns in that one. But it is, that's why I say as a car enthusiast, I'm coming at this very much from I like my cars. I'm not, I wasn't with Greenpeace climbing up trees. It's about they're good. We just have to make a change. Like we can't have this dismissive attitude of it's not going to work. We have to change. And anyone who's still dismissive of global warming, go and look at the Barrier Reef. Go and look at everyone loves David Attenborough, and the next minute they're saying, no, I want Range Rover. And I don't get it myself, for most situations at least, anyway. So I want to answer a number of these questions we got here on electric cars and sort of tackling, can't drive so far. I think the first one to address really is a common first point, which is no, it's not about electric cars. Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. See, hydrogen. There was a news this week about solid state batteries, which have been making for 40 years. Maybe this is a breakthrough. It could be a breakthrough. But hydrogen is the same. So if you don't know anything about the just how complex it is, then hydrogen, like solid state batteries, like nuclear fission or whatever, seem like the answer. Probably because we all watched it on Tomorrow's World in the 1980s, and the 90s, I think, or early 2000s. James May tried a hydrogen car, and it worked. So he's like, "Oh, this is great, it works." The problem is that, forgetting ideologically, I don't want to go to a place to fill up my transport. I'm looking forward to a future. We're talking as I came in, like my little one is 3 now, or will be 3 next year. He will never know, by the time he drives, he will never know a world of combustion. And I'm looking forward to that. Every morning you get in the car and it's full. So ideologically, I don't want to go to a place to fill my car and be at the mercy of massive corporations setting the price. I want the option of having solar, not that we have, but anyway, not that I'm some kind of crazy mission, for sort of political reasons, but there is that side. More importantly, it's fabulously hard to do at scale and cheaply, like EVs are being made. Hydrogen needs an infrastructure that is reliable and fit for purpose, which is going to cost hundreds of billions, if not trillions of pounds and dollars and euros, wherever you're watching. Who is going to build the infrastructure? It won't be local governments. The European Commission, the EU are putting in some money, but if you want to replace petrol or gasoline and diesel with hydrogen, just the sheer cost of it doesn't make any sense when we are surrounded literally by amazing pure battery electric vehicles and that do the job absolutely fine. Can hydrogen work for shipping, aviation, commercial buses, trucks? Possibly, where you can put that infrastructure in at the depot or point to point or either side of the ferry crossing. That could all work. Also, the electricity required to make that hydrogen is more than it takes just to put it into a battery electric vehicle. So you're spending more to make the hydrogen than you put the hydrogen in your car, then that is used to make electric, which doesn't make any sense. At the moment, the price is still expensive. If you are a hydrogen car owner, which there must be a couple in the world somewhere, the cost, at least the filling stations here in Europe, are several pounds or euros more than filling up with petrol and diesel. And so there are just no compelling arguments for hydrogen. It seems like it makes sense though, because when you go, oh, yes, brilliant. So you take H2O, you split it, you store it, you recombine it, you get energy. It seems so simple.
It's tremendously complicated. The lines in the hydrogen cover massive pressures. Yet people do seem to be kind of stuck on the future is hydrogen. Paul commented on a thread on social media, the future is hydrogen. My diesel can go 900 miles and they go on forever. Sorry, Paul, I would disagree with that. Diesels won't go on forever. I've been to the last couple of EV summits in Oslo, and the topic of hydrogen comes up. In terms of passenger cars, it's dismissed. I don't think anyone's really developing it. There might be some limited application, but in reality, it's just too complicated and needs that infrastructure behind it as well. It isn't really solving too many problems here. Hydrogen, as we discussed at the Oslo summit, is quite viable for commercial shipping. It's probably going to be one of its main applications by the sound of it, which is fair enough. You can't have batteries in the world that can go across the Atlantic Ocean. In terms of shorter ferry crossings, they already have electric ferries in Norway, operating very successfully. So again, shorter length ferries, I like crossing down here, electric, fine, so hydrogen, but not for cars. That's our opinion and well-informed opinions. based on global summits,
Mm.
the news that happens every day, that Martyn analyses every day. So I think we're quite happy to put to bed hydrogen for passenger cars isn't really a way forward. The key of electric cars is actually really simple. You know, they're not much more than the power drill, really, battery, motor.
And we're surrounded by it. In this room, there are plug sockets everywhere. Here, there's DC or there's AC posts all around to charge these cars on. Pretty much wherever you are, there is some electricity. But yeah, like I think there are maybe 9 hydrogen stations in the UK. I think there's maybe 6 in England. There's 1 in Scotland and Aberdeen, and then I think all but 3 of them are currently out of order, and they can supply 16 cars a day. So because whilst people go, hydrogen takes 5 minutes to fill up. Yes, but the station then needs about an hour to rest and recover, and then you can fill it up. So they can do about, so if you're the 17th car that turns up at a hydrogen filling station at one of the 3 that are currently working in this country, just wait until tomorrow. Simple, right? So
it sounds like a great solution. So I think if you lay it out and explain like this, I think hopefully you can through. Well, let's address, whilst we're talking about Paul's comments here, the second part was really my diesel going 900 miles. Yeah, okay, on one saying. So somebody can tell me they do 900 miles without stopping for the toilet or coffee or lunch. It's dangerous, not doing trucking, are you?
No, you can drive 9 hours a day, here, at least here anyway, under regulations. I don't understand this. Isn't it interesting? Perception's a really interesting thing. You think you need a car to go a really long way, but you really, really don't.
Yeah.
You just don't. I've never written down a mileage log for years since I used to have a company car and to keep one. But it'd be an interesting experiment just to do a mileage log on your phone or somewhere, and I bet you it's so much less than you think you drive.
I've done plenty of long journeys. Very beginning of this year, I drove to Geneva for a weekend. It was meant to be part of the Geneva Motor Show, which obviously was cancelled, but I drove anyway. And it was just the same as any other car, except it didn't cost me anything in fuel. In fact, it didn't cost me anything in electricity. Some Teslas you get free supercharging. Another car I was using there had that. So fortunately, Teslas do have the advantage here. But even less so, there are other cars now that can do the kind of range where we're talking 200, 300 miles on a charge. Some of the Teslas now can top 300 even, just normal drive. So by the time you've driven, let's say 200 miles, 3 to 4 hours of driving, you're probably going to want to stop. And you do. You stop and you have a coffee, you have your lunch. Now with the rapid charging, which is only getting better and better throughout the UK, Tesla had this advantage. They put the network in. Other suppliers are now catching up, so they have had the advantage. We do refer to Teslas quite a lot here. But you stop for 20 minutes, half an hour, it tops up the battery, phone tells you it's ready. That's enough to drive another 3 to 4 hours. Now that's free as well. So let's say you're going to stop for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, probably 20 minutes, really, with filling up a Range Rover or something, you've got coffee as well. If you said to somebody, let's stop for another 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, but it would be free rather than £100. I think probably a lot of people would probably like the idea of that.
Yes.
And this isn't future stuff. Like I've been driving electric cars for 5 years and travelled around Europe and up and down to Scotland and around the UK regularly, and it's not an issue. I guess there's a couple of times where you kind of give a little bit of thought to it, but again, it really is simplistic. It's very easy, and actually, it's just safer as well. You actually stop and have your coffee. With other cars other than Tesla, that's been a little bit more challenging. Granted, and we do have some customers who've had some of Jaguar I-Paces, Audi e-trons, and have found some frustrations with charging network. Shmi in his new Taycan is frustrated with his network. And this is where it's down to education. This is where the infrastructure being supplied outside of Tesla is improving rapidly. And actually now, I'm the first to admit, I would quite happily do the very long journeys with a non-Tesla now. I think it is more simplistic. I was lucky enough on Monday to be at the new GridServe site in Braintree. Now, this is a great new site. There will be, if you look at our channel on YouTube, you'll see a bit of video that came 2 days ago, it's on Tuesday, visiting GridServe Braintree. And I think that's a prime example of where they're all basically headed. This looks like a big petrol station, except it's just really rapid chargers. And some of those chargers could charge even big battery cars in kind of 20 minutes. You know, you're talking 20-minute charges at a cost of a few pounds, basically, probably less than £10 for a lot of them. And the facilities there are great. It is exactly what we're going to have. You stop, you have your lunch and a coffee, and off you go. And it doesn't cost you £100 in diesel. It will probably cost you £10, and you drive another 200-300 miles. So they're rolling out. And the GridServe, there were 100 of these in 5 years. And that's just them. There's other networks as well. Instacart with T, they're all rapidly expanding, and other networks out there. So the reality is now, this is where the education comes in there, because, you know, I think I've seen it a few times with the Porsche Taycan owners, and I think there just hasn't been as much knowledge fed to them at the point they're buying and saying, this is a rapid charger, this is a destination charger. The rapid chargers, what you use on the motorway, they're really powerful, take 20 minutes or so, half an hour, 40 minutes. And the destination charger is a kind of charger you plug into overnight at a hotel, after shopping for a few hours. And I think in this particular case with Shmi, and things in the Guardian, he was saying, I've been there for half an hour and it's added 7 miles. Well, it's not the right time, you know. And it's a shame, you know, this is a real shame, because that car, that journey could have been the same as any other car in reality, especially a Taycan. It's a fantastic vehicle. So, it's just frustrating, isn't it? And certainly a 900-mile journey, I wouldn't even consider it an issue with any of these larger battery electric vehicles now. Certainly a Tesla. I'd get in one now and drive to Rome. I've said to customers,
well, again, you know, pre-COVID, I was due to be driving to northern Italy to do some filming and some actually funny sort of EV drag race stuff. And I would have taken a Tesla. That's my only. I didn't want to think it was going to be a dash. It was going to be a day and a half driving down, do filming, come back. And I was like, oh, I could fly, but no, I'll drive. And actually, I didn't want to engage my brain enough to use the French and Italian DC fast chargers. So there is still a case. I'm not going to say everything's fine. I would have just grabbed a Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, a Tesla, quite genuinely, you just drive, and the car plans it all for you, and it says, right, you know, this place here, stop for 20 minutes, and then you're inside having the coffee. It sends you a message on your phone saying, I'm done, and you can't drive it. So genuinely in the Tesla, I'll get in one and drive anywhere in Europe without planning it, without grabbing satchels of cables, and just get it and go. I really would. I have done, you know, this is made up stuff. I have done that, and it is very, very easy. There's lots of Tesla owners that love their cross-European driving. I know a few who do a lot of miles driving around Europe and wouldn't touch anything else for the journey. So it kind of brings us on to, do you think this is a real person, Swiss Tony?
Definitely.
I wouldn't buy one, lack of range and expensive.
They are expensive.
Yeah.
They are expensive because I think if you look for a used car, you could probably get a really decent used motor on your driveway for, you know, 4 or 5 grand. That's quite old now, but actually even an 8 or 10-year-old car, everything's electric, everything's heated, and it's going to cost you a fortune in maintenance. But at that initial purchase moment, you can probably think, oh, I've got myself a nice BMW, nice German car, nice Audi A4 on the driveway. It's cost me 5 grand. So there's that fallacy there that people can't factor in that they're going to spend £400 a year on taxing the thing. They don't think about that. They don't think about the maintenance because it hasn't happened yet. They're like, oh, I'll be fine, we'll be fine. And then they get a bill for 2 grand. So it's true. At the point of purchase, an EV is a lot of money. But my first EV was £5,700. And that was a 22 kilowatt hour Renault Zoe. Battery lease, which takes the money off, I know. But that is not an unreasonable amount of money to pay for what was at the time a 2.5-year-old car. A few things in there. It was from a main dealer who didn't know what they were selling. The price wasn't high enough. It was a few years ago before EVs were more popular as they are now. So lots of caveats in there. My second EV was a Zoe last August. It was brand new. Battery lease. So that takes 10 grand off. But still, for what I paid for it, and we're not wealthy, but that is an acceptable amount of money for me to buy a new car with. And even if we financed it, it would have had monthly payments. So,
well, I think this expensive thing is starting to diminish a little bit. Certainly, like I was saying earlier, the new cars especially. And you look at, obviously, increasingly people don't buy their cars, they might lease them. You know, a whole, probably another topic, this one really, another session maybe, but the idea of kind of car ownership is obviously largely predicted to be sort of fading out. We won't own our own cars, we'll sort of lease them or use them on a daily or hourly basis even. But if we look at the price of a, let's have a look for an example. BMW, I was writing a couple down. BMW 320D, £45,000 for a half sensible one of them. BMW, I mean, if you want something fast and smooth, 340i perhaps. Again, you can put some options on there, you can spend some good money. And that's straight in Tesla territory. I mean, that's Model 3 long range territory easily. And then you've got the cheap Model 3 standard range. I mean, these are cars that compete with Audi A4s, BMW 3 Series, and they can be £40,000, £50,000. Used Teslas here, we've got a couple here which are 30,000, smidge over £30,000. Yes, a lot of money as a cash buyer, certainly. And what we have quite a lot here are customers who have perhaps got an Audi A4, 4 years old, quite a reasonable car. And what they're spending monthly on that car, perhaps in finance or PCP type contracts, plus their fuel, plus their maintenance, often sees them saving, can be £300 or £400 a month just in their fuel alone if they do a bit of mileage. And so that puts them in Tesla territory again. You know, they've often perhaps financed a Tesla, which the finance is a bit more, the purchase price of the car is more, the maintenance is next to zero really, and fuel costs, again, not saying the electricity is free, but it can be very cheap. Some people are getting it free at the overnight tariff. You get dynamic electric tariffs, and Martyn will definitely tell you that. You've probably got a referral code.
I'll get later on that.
And again, when we talk about then leasing costs as well, you've got comparable leasing costs. I think in terms of, yes, it's not somebody that, if you drive a £1,000 Ford Focus, that's fine. I'm not expecting you to be able to suddenly afford Teslas, but actually people buy the newer cars, the 3 Series, the Audi A4s and such like. The electric cars are definitely a viable option, and I guess not just Teslas or long range, other good electric cars out there now. So I don't think that's as prevalent, and I think people do need to be aware that there's a big saving to be had in terms of fuel, maintenance, running costs. You know, in fact, the Teslas don't even have a fixed service schedule. There isn't sort of a service requirement as such. You won't say I need a service in 1,000 miles. Some tyre maintenance for sure, but you know, wiper blades now and then, screen wash, screen wash, put some there. But there isn't that £500 service like you'd have a Land Rover, probably more than that Land Rover. But so there are factors in that in terms of affordability as well. The residuals as well, this is a big one as well, that we're seeing a lot of now. I guess myself as a car dealer should be quite qualified to answer this. You could go and buy a BMW 330D, something like that. Nice car, just like a 330D. Land Rover Discoveries, you know, there's a lot of nice cars out there, but their values have been falling faster and faster and faster. Now, not saying a Tesla electric car doesn't depreciate. Some of the top-end Teslas certainly depreciate. But actually, when you come to, I guess, the more mid-range level of electric car, and certainly the cheaper they get, the less they depreciate. It's as simple as that. There's this rising tide of demand meets the available supply. So this is, you know, quite remarkably, we've seen Nissan Leafs, Renault Zoe's not really changed much in their used value over the last couple of years now, really, 18 months certainly. They've really held their value strongly because there's a demand for them. Whereas the 3-litre diesel engine stuff and even 320Ds and other cars, the demand is falling. I guess every week we've got publicity about we're going to stop cars going into Birmingham, Manchester, London. And so who wants one of them? There's a lot of people trying to part exchange them with me now. The reality is I usually have to try and find other traders to buy them. I don't have the scope or desire to have if I took every Land Rover I was offered in part exchange, that road there would be full.
You can't get rid of that.
So in terms of what a car costs, if we look at costs to own or run, they would usually be cheaper.
I think people forget as well, and like any behaviour that you do all the time, you forget that you do it. Putting in fuel in a car, we've all grown up with it. So we've all grown up with that concept.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of the month, or when you look at your banking app, when you look at what you've spent, I think you subconsciously skip over that. Now, not if you're doing 5,000 miles a month and it's your business to do a lot of miles, but I think the little 20 quid here, 30 quid there, go to get some groceries, I put some petrol or diesel in. I think when you just don't factor that in as an expense, and then you say to an EV driver, the idea of putting 30 quid into their car, well, that's absolutely alien, to me. So I think there's a behavioural thing there as well that you just don't realise. And in the comments, funnily enough, he was saying they put 30 quid out. Andy, solar and EV, I've done 3,000 miles in my Model 3. I've spent no more than 30 quid on charging. And also there's another layer in this as well. In this country, the early network. So when Ecotricity built out that early network of DC fast chargers, they made them free vend. So I think it was a massive mistake. I understand the logic. And even New Pulse or BP Pulse, as they're branding, they open up a new station. It's free for a short period of time. Even then, I think it's a big mistake, because you should never think that electricity is free. If it's DC fast charge, I don't mind paying 5, 10, 15 quid, because I want reliable hardware. I want these business models to work for the charging network. I want them to have an ROI over a sensible period of time. And I want to know that I can turn up like GridServe. There's plenty of them. That's not going to be like Norway, but turn up, there's a free charger, there's a spare charger that I can plug into, that it's working, it's quick. I don't mind paying on the rare occasion that I need a DC fast charger, a good amount of money. But because you would do that every single week at a petrol station.
Yeah, this is it. And a lot of Teslas to begin with in the early days, the kind of benefit of the early adopters and myself included in that, you had free supercharge on the Tesla supercharger. They have a great advantage. Now, that doesn't happen on the new ones anymore. Where you can get some tokens with referral codes, such like, I can give you one of those referral codes. If you're buying a new Tesla, I'll happily hand you a referral code for some free supercharging. But yes, there was free supercharging. It's a selling point for some of these cars. That supercharging will transfer,
and that's locked into the car.
So yes, on some basically.
So if I bought a used Tesla from Tesla,
no,
they turn it off now.
Correct. Yeah.
If I buy a used Tesla from you or any third party, it's locked into the car.
If the car had it and has retained it,
yes.
Okay. So, and you're talking some cars into early 17, but certainly early 17, pre-2017 cars and Teslas, they would usually have free supercharge, and that would usually transfer to the next owner. Now, whether Tesla keep that long term, we always kind of put a little bit of clause if Tesla change their mind. But the reality is that's what happens, and that's a selling point for a lot of Tesla. Drive from here across Europe, or do 50,000 miles a year, and it can have free supercharging.
Yeah.
So again, you might have 40, 30, 50,000 pound Tesla, but if you're not spending a few £1,000s on fuel, you have big savings.
Yeah.
So that does carry with some Teslas, but although I have some free supercharging credit on mine, again, I'm with you. I really quite happy that if I turn up to a rapid charging point, it's there, available, clean, tidy, it works, and I pay a few pounds for it. I still haven't put £100 of diesel in another car. I used to have a Land Rover Discovery. It was £100 a go.
Yeah.
We have a tow truck, a pickup truck we use for towing trailer around, and unfortunately, I'd love that to be electric. I really would.
One day, soon.
And it will head there, and as soon as one's available, we'll have it. But the reality is that it's really inconveniently annoying sometimes and expensive.
Yes.
We'll start and we can get a coffee anyway, but it can be expensive. So all that to be factored in. So let's move on to another question. I think we've probably already covered some of this. Robin says EVs at least 2 decades away. They're a bridge too far at the moment. Short answer, completely disagree. Been driving for 5 years, family car, camping, driving around UK and Europe. So not at all. I don't think.
And they're lasting a lot longer than people ever thought they would. Usual caveats: yes, there are Leafs in Arizona that got hot, but there's so many Leafs that you can go buy now that have got all bars or one bar gone. The batteries are lasting such a long time.
Next question. Yeah, what happens when batteries need changing?
Well, I got a battery lease Renault Zoe. I don't care. I give it back to the French. They give me a new one, and that's not going to happen. So that's one of the reasons why, for me to get an EV through the household budget was, firstly, the battery lease on the Renault Zoe brings down the purchase price, but also my wife is naturally quite a conservative person, small c, and I was like, you know what, actually, with this battery lease on the Renault Zoe, the only thing that could really go wrong with the car isn't hours. And actually, if you run out of electric through your own fault, Renault will come and pick you up and take you. So it covered off those two things.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just lasting a very long time. We've seen these, 500,000-mile Teslas. There's a scorecard somewhere on the internet that someone's keeping. They just go on and on and on.
You've seen the chap in Germany. He's got, I think it's 1.2 million kilometres on his Tesla. So
they just keep going.
It's kind of addresses part of it. Again, it's one of the questions. I don't think it's sent through. Oh, you did have somebody like how long would it be expected to last, which is tied in with what happens when the batteries need changing. And the simple answer to that is they're designed for a life of car. They're very unlikely to need changing. They will go on for hundreds of thousands of miles. Now, what tends to happen with a battery is over time, it does degrade somewhat. Depends how it's treated, but it can degrade. It can have some less miles in it when it's 5 years old, with 100,000 miles than what it had when it was brand new. But in the scheme of things, that difference doesn't usually matter too much, to be fair. The degradation curve, from what we've seen from some of the high mileage cars in the States, with the Teslas at least, is in the first 20,000 miles, you do get some degradation. Actually, then it plateaus and it's pretty steady. So over time, yes, a car here that's 5-6 years old now won't do as many miles as it did when it was new. But it still works perfectly well. Still does, in the case of a Tesla, a couple hundred miles. So what happens when in 10 years' time they're out of warranties? You worried about that? Look, let's just say you don't have a lease battery. Let's say you own your battery. For me, it's not a concern. I think what we've proven now is I think the Prius comes into it is that the batteries tend to last. I mean, there's probably some occasions, but there's plenty of occasions where the diesel engine goes, petrol engine lets go, isn't it?
Look, there are more and more warranty products on the market, and if you were super worried, just warranty it. And I'd give that piece of advice to anybody buying a very expensive, good, have it. If you can't self-insure, in other words, if your car stopped working tomorrow, you can afford to replace it. If you can't self-insure, then you need insurance. Well, we insure our houses, and we insure our cars, because generally we haven't got, the money to buy the same thing again without making a dent in our life. Insure it, warranty it. There are more, and there will be more products coming to the market that cover off things like batteries and powertrains and drivetrains and inverters, and just do that.
I think the risk is far less than the combustion cars we've got. There's far less to go wrong. There's less physical moving parts by some hundred.
Yeah. I never worry that I'm going to get in an EV and it's not going to work.
And I think the reality is as well that, let's say we get a few more years down the line, and because most of them are still covered under warranty for the drivetrains and Teslas, and the early ones are still 8 years and limited mileage, but we come out of warranty. And there's already a number of independent specialists who can work on batteries and do great work. It's actually fairly simple to change a battery in the car. In most of them Teslas, it just kind of pops out from the bottom. So we still have crash cars, we still have parts. And you can easily just, I mean, even a new battery is probably cheaper than a performance engine for a lot of, you're talking high performance cars with Tesla, and again, I'll steer towards them, I know most about them, but you've got a high performance car. If you're trying to buy a Mercedes AMG engine, I'm sure that's going to cost you significant. And actually the battery is cheaper than that. And you've got to remember that batteries are getting cheaper, so let's get down the line another couple of years and the battery on a long range car, maybe it's £5,000, and maybe that almost doubles your range. So rather than changing the car and everything, dispose of that, you actually just maybe upgrade it. Now, battery upgrades are already available for Nissan Leaf. You've seen Matt Cleveley, a friend of ours at Cleveley EV, great garage. So they already upgrade in Leaf batteries, bigger capacity. It keeps the car on the road. It's I wouldn't say simple, Matt would disagree, but it's all fairly well doable. And so the short answer really for what happens when batteries need changes is very unlikely. They will degrade a bit over time. It's very unlikely that you just have to change it. This is a mentality that comes really from the 12 volt, where you say they are 3 years old, I've probably got to change the battery.
Yeah.
And actually the 12 volt, they still have 12 volt batteries which power up a lot of systems. They do need changing, but that's most likely on 12 volt.
And your battery, your attraction battery, as you'll hear it called, your high voltage battery, has an inherent value long past it's in the car.
Yeah.
So if you want to go on eBay when we finish this stream and have a look for used Leaf battery, sometimes there'll be literally someone's got a crashed wrecked Leaf, and they just pull the battery, you can buy the whole thing, or they split it into modules and you can buy that. They're not cheap. They're not in the hundreds of pounds. So whereas an engine that has reached its useful life and it needs so much work that it's just put a new engine in the car, that's going to scrap/recycling at best. The battery in your car, even in 10 years, when it can no longer provide the power, 100 kilowatts, 150 kilowatts of power, then it's got an inherent value as storing energy that either in home storage or second life, third life, all these schemes that the car makers came up with a few years ago, some of them still do, they make a good press release that they were having second life.
Take that car, put it on the garage wall, home battery storage.
Got nothing to do. Yep. None of these companies are doing any business because they're not coming out of the cars.
Yeah.
So they all thought they would do by now. They just keep going. Yeah. So we launched this company. We've got no stock. They kind of use them from old sort of prototype cars and that, and they've gone through them. So the battery's no problem.
Yeah, it really is. I guess it's a natural concern, and now, certainly for myself as an owner, it really isn't. And I think we're seeing a decline really in the uptake of lease battery cars. I think because of that confidence is built up over time.
Yeah.
We just don't see issues with them very often at all. Certainly far more rare than any combustion engine. Okay.
A couple of questions in the. Thank you.
I can't read that.
I'm squinting. So Tony had mentioned that he loved his plug-in hybrid. Managed 85% of his 11,000 miles over 2 years on only electric with a plug-in hybrid, but ended up getting obsessed with the tech and going full EV. And it's just more relaxing now driving a full EV. A couple of other questions that came in that I saw would be good to get to, which is about I drove a 24 kilowatt hour Leaf to Poland from Bedfordshire last summer, and it was brilliant. Andy, solar EV we mentioned, had his Model 3 since August and only uses the granny cable or the 3-pin, which I did for ages. I didn't get my Zappi charger installed at home because I was at the time on the train to London 5 days a week in my old life when I had and I was in my old job. And so my wife was driving the small battery Zoe, and she's a school nurse. So you go school, home, next day, every morning it was full. We were using the 3-pin charger for about a year. I'm sure electricians will tell me off. It was on a separate garage circuit on a 32 amp breaker. But still, it was the granny cable. An interesting question from James Coyle to put to Richard. Yeah. Would you go for a used Model S or a brand new Model 3? Common question.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I switch camps quite a lot in terms of which one I prefer. It's down to how you use it. So for the last 5 years, my main car has been a Model S. So I had a Model S in 2015, brand new, first new car I ever bought. Loved it. They were a bit cheaper than the new ones as well, actually. But the Model S was great. I absolutely loved it. I was then fortunate enough I was one of these people to put the Model 3 reservation in, now about 4 years ago, something like that. So I was there, I got one of the first Model 3s in the country. Fantastic car. And I think there was this concern that the new Model 3 is cheaper, maybe newer tech in some ways. What's the point of the Model S? But it is just more simple. It is more basic. It just suits a different need. So it's a bit smaller was one of the main benefits for the UK. I mean, it's cheaper new, it's smaller. And for me, I don't have a driveway, I have on-street parking, so actually physically being smaller was quite handy for me. It's more like a go-kart than Model 3. I think the main difference I say is Model 3 is probably more comparable to like a BMW 1 Series, more like a go-kart to drive, great fun, good for country lanes. If I was doing a lot of motorway driving, Model S. So I switched between Model 3 and Model S. I don't tend to keep a car for very long, so I've got this business. But so for most of last year, I've had a Model 3, and I've actually got a new Model 3 coming next week. So I'm really excited about that, and there'll be loads of review videos about the new Model 3. This will be one of the first new performance models on the road. We're getting them in the UK before the States. That's why we did a comparison video last week, and that's really taken off on YouTube. But so it depends on the case in point. So I've been using the Model S again more recently for about the last month, and I've really enjoyed going back to an S again. I've really enjoyed it. I find the seats in the S more comfortable. Some people say the seats in the Model 3 are more comfortable. Personally, I prefer the Model S, better cruiser, it feels more refined, more features to it, a bit more kind of luxury touch. It's no Mercedes S-Class, but it just kind of feels a bit more refined. The space is, hatchback. I love having a hatchback over a saloon all day long. So it does depend on use. And I was quite vocal when the 3 came out, and a lot of people were telling me to buy or sell their Model S's for them. I was saying, with the Model 3, just have a really good drive in it first, because coming from an S to a 3, it might not be as good as you sort of think, And so it really is down to use and really good drive in each. One of the advantages, obviously, now with such a big selection of Teslas here, and this is a row, Model X is here, there's some 3s up there somewhere, and there's the S's down here, is that you can really see and try both, and different colours and interior trims and such like. So I guess money unlimited, I would have a Model S long range performance for myself. The X is just a bit big for my personal needs, but we have lots of customers. The X is fantastic. It's getting a lot of people out of Land Rover Discoveries and Range Rovers. And you've got to remember that, and I was just really kind of saying my point here, that we've got a lot of people that now can benefit from the now zero benefit in kind liability of electric cars. And when we talk about affordability, I sort of made a note of this and didn't come onto it, but if you buy an electric car for your business or have one as a company car, if it's electric, there's zero benefit in kind, 1% next year to get that. But again, why would you have the 320D as a company car and pay a couple hundred, £300 in tax benefit in kind each month when you pay nothing and you've got Model 3? I'd argue that's a better car to drive. So between Model S, Model 3, I'm on the fence, depends on usage. When I drive one for a bit, I enjoy it. When I go back to the other one, I then enjoy that for its merits as well, to be fair. So back in the Model 3 as of next Wednesday, and I'll see how long I keep going for and enjoy
Wow,
it.
it's a quick one though, so I think we'll see it on a track one day.
Quite soon, we're doing some good range tests and be on a track. That's the thing. I guess with Model 3, you can get them on a track as well. They have a full track mode. So yeah, very, very interesting. I had just because I mentioned track mode, I was just going to come to a question. I was actually after something I called Eddie. Eddie's a big petrol head. We met when we were petrol heads, and we'd go to car meets and Kiss and Heads a lot, and M5s and now the RS6s and this kind of stuff, TVRs. Now Eddie says he's got a Lotus, and he does a number of track days, and he can drive to a track, drive around the track all day, drive home, and actually the tyres last, I think it's on 5,000 miles or something. Brake pads last a long time. Is there an EV that can do that? So we've gone off on a bit of a tangent here. Whilst we're on the topic of tracks. Now that's interesting because he's a petrol head and he has his Lotus. He loves it, from what I can make out, and enjoys it a great deal. The key thing is here, during the week, he cycles to work, or walks to work even. So this Lotus, it's, I'm not out to criticise that because it's not driving 30,000 miles up and down the motorway in it, and it's not a massive great diesel with lots of, especially reasons. So, but can you get an electric track car? Well, sort of. The Tesla Model 3, there was one parked here a little while, someone's moved it, but they have a track mode, which is phenomenal. Version 2 track mode, you can split the power front to the back, you can have it just to the back, you can turn traction control. There's 20 settings for traction control. I was doing some film with Carwell, and that was some recently, and the first launch, I can't say the results, got to be careful here. Bogged down as the traction was biting in, so you could dial it down to -10, too much wheel spin. -8, just right. So, you can really, there are heading track orientated in some degree, but they're big heavy cars, and you will get through tyres and brake pads trying to drive on track. we'll probably do another video at some point, by the way, a friend of mine who does track his Model 3 a lot and has done some modifications and is a bit of an expert on Tesla brakes. So I'm hoping he'll come and join me one day for a chat about them. But we will head down the line where we have more energy dense battery packs, lighter cars. We're all heading there. So for something probably hard to compete with a Lotus, but you know, you can't produce all of that on mass scale to make it cheap as well. So you'll get that. Well, the Tesla Roadster will probably be much better.
Yeah.
It won't make the noises, of course. I can't answer that bit there. Okay, let's take a comment now. Can you read in those, Martin?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, Andy Davies, do you have a view on the future of how the government will tax EV drivers? Yeah, so vehicle excise duty, which is on 40 grand plus cars, even EVs, but I don't pay road tax as we call it. How will they?
Never remove that one.
How will they? Okay. So, how do we make money in the future from taxing cars? TBC.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a topic. I was listening about the radio the other day discussing this, and I think they're going to try and drive towards a sort of taxation per mile for any driver. Which again, you know, a lot of people do go towards the electric car and Tesla route to save tax. But we're all used to the road, and I'm certainly not one saying, well, I'd rather not pay tax. I'd rather pay some tax and for the miles I use and maintain the roads.
Yes,
we can do it. For sake, you know, so.
I don't mind paying how much I drive. I don't really want.
That's what I'm trying to bring in. I think that's what we're steering towards, is a sort of per mile, no matter what you drive type thing. If you use the road,
then you pay. I don't really want a black box in my boot or from the insurance that tracks how I drive. So people say, oh, you know, if you drive, like new drivers now as well and young drivers, if you drive more carefully and then you get cheaper insurance, you know, there is a danger of going down that route of having very connected, very smart cars. And, you know, Tesla do it with their insurance product. They know exactly how you're driving. And I know I would hate to think, well, I can't have any fun in my car because next year my premium might go up because I've been driving faster. So I don't want that, but I don't mind people knowing the number of miles I drive, obviously with the usual, you know, security and privacy concerns of, is that data logging where I've driven and when and who has access to that? And there'll be some very big privacy concerns. In terms of, is it just on the MOT? They already do record the mileage. That you know, have an MOT from year 0 rather than after year 3, and they just somebody records your mileage once a year, and then you pay a bill. No problem. There's number plate recognition on roads. There's ways to do it, which I think wouldn't be too intrusive. But yeah, I mean, that's a bit outside the scope of things, really. How are we doing for time? Good, not too bad. A topic that comes up quite a lot that we'll address here, really. There's two aspects to this. There's a number of critics say, yes, but it uses more CO2 to make an electric car. So what's the benefit? Second aspect of that is we have to burn stuff to make electricity. Is that right? Those electric cars are going to destroy the grid. We've got to burn more coal. What's the point? I would just listen to the experts. I listen to the National Grid, who for years have been studying this, and the grid is more than capable. Even if we all had EVs tomorrow, click our fingers. Our National Grid have been working on this problem for a very long time. It's not to say that there are some local infrastructure issues. I do acknowledge that, and that some local areas will need the grid bolstering. As a National Grid, we don't need 6 new nuclear power stations. Especially with shifting that load overnight, which you can do with incentivizing and pricing. And so that helps to ensure that we're using our grid efficiently. We are going to bring the country down by driving EVs.
No, so the grid's good for a long time. And actually, EVs will help the grid in a lot of ways. Again, big topic of, this is probably more where it goes next. This is kind of next steps now. So this is a big point of the EV Summit again. And that's about how electric cars will actually help the grid in a lot of ways. And this is, you covered a bit of this on the show today about vehicle to grid, and there's another term for that. So what the plan is as well is, at the moment, the grid has all these spikes up and down. The half-time in football, big demand, all the kettles are on. Then it goes down. It goes up and down all the time. And this is where batteries and energy storage on both the grid scale will help because it will steady this, but actually you've got potentially 100 kilowatt hour battery outside your house plugged in. And so what will actually start happening is your car will start charging, and then the football finishes and the house needs electricity. The car will put it back into your house and into the grid, cut off that peak of demand by local energy. So then start charging, it carries on, and it's done by 6 in the morning. It's an island just outside of Oslo where they've been doing this.
Yeah.
And the trials seem to be going very well. And so quite against the electric cars having a negative effect on the grid, they're actually going to be helping the grid. And this is in conjunction with grid level storage, energy storage. Again, grid serve, quite a good case in point on, it goes to a bigger scale than this, but when I was there Monday, and again, have a look at the video and our pictures, it was very foggy. And they've got all these solar panels, it was extremely foggy, and straight away I had the comment saying, oh, there's going to be no electricity at the pumps. And what they do is, yes, they have solar on the roof of the sort of forecourt there, and they've got some acres, exactly 10-acre site or something down the road with a solar farm, and that energy goes into massive batteries. They've got 6 megawatt hours of battery there, and so the batteries are constantly refilling from sources like wind and solar, and then when you need a burst, it comes out the batteries. And actually, you know, their whole scheme is net neutral, you know, zero. And we are starting to see grid level battery storage now in the grid as well. So we can harness green energy, especially, of course, and then supply and deal with the spikes and demands. You've got to remember as well, just on a street level, with some houses plugged in, we've got quite a lot of capacity. A lot of that is down to our homes are more efficient, our fridges are used far less. Our street lights, LED how they used to have. So this is where in London we're seeing sort of street charging, which addresses another issue raised by somebody else. That I don't have off-street parking, how do I charge? And we're seeing the solution, say, in London now, which is parking on the street with either facilities and lampposts or separate posts. And so even if you don't have off-street parking, we will, you know, there are solutions coming through to address that. And we don't just plug in every night even, you know, once a week, the way the batteries are going there. And so there will be solutions for that as well. Let's just answer this one also talking on the topic of do they use more, you know, CO2? We had this question about they use more CO2 to manufacture. So we haven't really addressed that. They use more to manufacture. And there's a particular story recently that kind of spun that one up with the Aston Gate thing. And so, what's the point?
So batteries do take an amount of CO2 to produce in terms of factories and production. The BMW i3 was a great case of where BMW built specific facilities that were powered by wind and solar, and they actually built that factory with some eco credentials. VW are doing the same thing. 2 new plants opening in China that have got all of their wastewater and water runoff being reused, with massive solar farms powering them as well. So EVs have started that conversation in terms of car making to ensure that how we make EVs is as sustainable as possible. But beware of those stories that are out there saying you've got to do 50,000 miles before the, you know.
One thing was that they always forget that the petrol and diesel has to be constantly pumped out of the ground, shipped around the world, refined, distributed, and that usually doesn't go into that equation.
And the electricity required to refine fuel. Again, we kind of think, because these things happen out of our vision, so we don't think, because why would you spend your day thinking about, I don't know, where your rubbish goes, how your fuel is? We don't see it, so we kind of conveniently forget it. But fuel refining takes up megawatts and megawatts of energy, just
and
to
some precious metals in
just
which then can't be reused, whereas the ones in the battery can be.
Absolutely. So why spend all that electricity refining fuel when you could just take it straight into one of these?
The kind of latest, more trusted statistics tend to go along the line of, and there's a lot of factors in this in terms of, you know, materials and how green the factory and production manufacturing is, but is usually between about 16 to 45,000 miles, in which case the EV becomes far less, far more efficient in its life cycle for CO2. So from there on in, it's a clear winner. It carries on going, and that goes into sort of next life of the batteries. As well. So it just gets better and better. So if someone says, yeah, but electric cars use more CO2 to make, what's the point? Yes, they do a little bit, and there's a little bit of truth, but then they, over a life cycle, vastly better. So if you see some trusted figures on this, you'll see. There's a good video, you've probably seen it from Clover Life on YouTube. I recommend looking at his videos on this as well. So, you see the questions there?
So Harrison says, how are you finding the new Model 3? So with the heat pump in the winter, of course we've done minus temperatures the last couple of days overnight. That, if you've seen that Model 3, the new one in the video, that was for a customer of yours. So
well, yeah, we've got it here, but quite quickly that had a new home. It's actually the first of the new shape in the Channel Islands now. So
you weren't driving it thousands of miles.
No, we didn't get to extensive testing that. But this is what will happen next week. So on Wednesday, 9:30 in the morning, I get a new one. And I think by the end of the day, it's probably going to have 300 or 400 miles on it. And what I want to do is next week is run side-by-side comparisons and do the same journey, the same speed, and the same conditions.
Yeah.
Literally in convoy with at least one or two, or maybe more testers, and see the real difference. The heat pump is alleged to make some difference. The long range performance of a slightly bigger battery, the wheels are meant to be more aerodynamic. So it'd be really interesting to see. Again, contentious issue, quoted range, real world range, Model 3 performance, charges start 300 miles, 309 miles. The reality is I don't try and get the most, but I tended to get 240, something like that, out of the Model 3 performance. The new one, we're also expecting greater things. So next week, Wednesday, probably video coming Thursday. So subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon, and you'll get notifications. But in next week, you'll see a number of comparison videos. We want to do range tests, performance tests, different tyres. We're going to do some ski
really?
Stuff like that soon as well. Yeah,
interesting.
So we're going to be doing quite a lot, and we'll have more information on that. The initial things of the new Model 3 that I was kind of excited about, this sort of double pane glass. Again, there's a video we lit out, not the most scientific, but we did do a little bit of driving. We couldn't really feel it. I think there's a psychological difference. It's just quieter because it's got but it wasn't nice and down. I was expecting something different. And sound meter test, albeit pretty crude, and didn't really show great results. But potentially, obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into noise and passing traffic. Maybe that's going to be better. The headlights are distinctly different on the new one. Not that I don't think they're bad on the old one if they're adjusted correctly. That'll be another video about adjusting, because there's been a few complaints about Model 3 headlights. And I think as long as they're the old ones, at least as long as they're aimed right, are actually very good. A lot of them aren't brilliant. And you can adjust them yourself in the car. Don't have to get out. Just adjust them. Yeah. So we'll do a little bit of how to do that. So new headlights, I think, are probably one of the biggest changes for the new one. The heat pump will probably make a few miles or some miles of difference, and we'll know more next week on that.
Harrison also says, are you open here? He would like to come down, but can he see the cars in person? I mean, you can see that we are COVID distanced.
But it'd be far easier for film to be a little bit closer than this. In fact, it kind of looks a bit closer on the screen now.
We are a long way. But obviously there's no customers walking around, so what's the deal?
Yeah, we're open. It just has to be restricted by appointment. We have to have one customer pair at a time, not multiple customers. So we're open, one customer at a time. We just try and keep touch points to a minimum. If there is a test drive, then we have to wipe the steering wheel down, and we do have to wear face masks when you come into the building here. But yes, we are open Mondays to Saturdays, but by appointment. So do just call us and book an appointment in.
Excellent, excellent. And finally, we have Dan, who says, have you ever messed around with the SR Plus, the Standard Range Plus sound system for the speakers that aren't hooked up? What is that? Is that like a non-premium thing then, like the rear seats? It's like it's capable but not switched on?
Yeah, Rumours.
Okay.
So the answer is I hadn't really played around that. What we did notice is the standard range that we had in last week. The can't really call it parcel shelf, but the bit that you can see for the glass, but behind the back seat, there was some different patterns there for speakers compared to the older one. The older version we had was a long range, which always was promoted with more speakers. So again, we'll do some more testing with that. I haven't really played around with sound setups. I did have a Tesla Model S here once that had something like a £30,000 custom audio system, which vibrated the building out, and so that was quite something. But I haven't really played with speakers.
Interesting.
So it'd be interesting if the new one's got a heated steering wheel as well.
Yeah.
So they do probably all of them, but does the standard range just have it turned off?
Yeah. So the steering wheels are thicker on newer Teslas, and what we think is a software update comes before Christmas, which Elon Musk has tweeted about with fire emojis, and we're pretty sure that one of those things will be heated steering wheel turned on because the hardware's in the cars. James says, so you do ship cars all over the place? He goes, Channel Islands as well?
Yeah, there's a number of Teslas on the Channel Islands, and I think a lot of them have probably come through here. On the Channel Islands, you can't order a new one. You can't order a new Tesla. Yeah.
So if you go to Tesla UK, oh wow.
Yeah, so you can contact us. We can help you out with that. And we've got a contact over there to help with the arrangements on that end. So for new Tesla, I've picked up quite a few now, and we pick them up with our trailer. Usually from Southampton, so it's just 20 minutes from here.
Where they arrive in the country.
They arrive off the boat, so don't go on trucks and stuff, less damage, chances. Yeah. So from Southampton, and then we would typically take them straight to Portsmouth and put them straight in the terminal there. So yeah, we can certainly aid with that, no problem.
Brilliant. It's been really interesting to do this.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah. I got a bunch of questions around benefit in kind tax, but we should probably leave it for that's probably a whole other show.
I think there is in terms of how to purchase benefit, especially for company car drivers. There's quite a lot of benefits to the company and the drivers and their tax liabilities and stuff as well. So there's quite a lot of ground, and I would like to see, and although I can't read the comments on
it's the stream's a long way away.
We'll go through them all, and what I would be looking for is points of topic and discussion, which I want to carry this through to a more regular one. I'm happy to take in constructive criticism and suggestions, and I know quite a few people, especially in the Tesla world, and have different people in with their specialist knowledge on topics as well. So there's plenty to go forward. Obviously, we've got Christmas coming up, so a bit of disruption, but I'm trying to make this even a weekly live session and very casual. We can do this on a phone. I can walk around and show things. I'll do some technical questions with Teslas especially. So I'll go through these comments and answer any that we haven't been able to answer here as well. I did have one, somebody stated on social media, I don't want electric cars, they're boring. Well, they've never been in some of the Teslas, 0 to 60 2.5 seconds, not boring. Quite opposite. They can make you faint. Yeah, I won't go into that. Too constructive a question.
I know what they mean. I'm trying to think of an example recently with sound. So I quite like watching Rallycross, and obviously that was disrupted. I like all motorsport really, but I do like to catch up on that, and they tend to put it on. I'm not often around at the weekend when it's on the telly, so I watch it on YouTube the following week, and then a few weekends ago, a few months ago now, actually, at one of the World Rallycross events, because normally they're not the most exciting sounding cars, but they are sort of quite buzzy. They had Ken Block there in an electric version to do some testing for when World Rallycross goes fully electric in 22. The feeder series is going next year, and I must admit, it was a bit boring. There was just they hadn't put the microphones in the right place.
Yeah.
It was just silent. It was a bit dull. And with motorsport, I missed the sound. So I'm not going to pretend that there aren't challenges. That sound, that visceral. Yeah. I remember going. My first Silverstone when I was growing up was 1994. Before the grandstand, stood on the banks. You could get in quite cheap. And my first ever motorsport experience. And I can almost still feel it, like when those, probably the V12s, I imagine, were literally making you shake. I'm not saying that there's bits of an EV that are incomparable to a car, but that's motorsport, that's racing. I don't want that when I'm doing my errands and shopping.
Well, this is what I don't get. I don't get the 6-litre V8 to drive between Basingstoke and Reading on the commute in the rush hour.
That side of it, I don't miss at all.
I agree.
It's less stress.
I think the noise in motorsport as well, like you talk to somebody who, the cars from the 90s sounded better. No, the cars from the 80s sounded better.
Yeah.
So let's just, remember them, still appreciate them for what everything was at the time. But we're talking about decisions on new cars where you drive every day and go shopping and travel and commute and stuff like that. So, it's a different area and petrol head as well. So I do like the sound of a good V8, and I did have TVRs and other V8 cars. I love them. Yeah, I love them. Brilliant. Okay, well, we probably should start wrapping this up, really. So I'm happy to answer some of these questions online afterwards as well. But let's just go towards this 2030.
Yeah.
I've been asked now by several people in the media, are we really going to be ready?
Well, look, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, you were using, if you had the latest tech, you were using an iPhone 3GS, and the App Store, which Steve Jobs, people forget, the first iPhone didn't have apps. He didn't want anyone else making an app to go on his beautiful creation. The App Store didn't come with the first phone. That took a while for the app. It's foreign to think of now, like the app, phone, apps, tablets. It's so obvious, but the first iPhones didn't have. So you were probably using an iPhone 3GS or a Nokia something or a BlackBerry Bold. That was 9 years ago. Think of what we've done in the last 9 years, and it's really hard. Try and future predict, and you'll get it massively wrong. You'll either overshoot or underestimate. Honestly, in 9 years' time, it's no problem. One of the reasons I'm so excited about EVs is because the new ones are great, and new EVs are brilliant. This EV that I own is the first new car that I've ever owned. I've always owned a car, even if it's a year old. My Audi TT was a year old. I've never wanted to take that hit of depreciation. So used cars are so much more important to me than new. Like, the new ones are interesting, but this is where I find the used market. Like, just think about that in 10 years' time. You are going to be able to get every possible shape, size, age EV. The new ones are going to be incredible, but the used market is going to be really vibrant, and it's not going to be expensive anymore. So that, for me, is where I get excited about EVs, because the new ones are interesting. But
there's a point I've made. There are used EVs. Okay, it might not be the Teslas. Teslas are from about £30,000. But there are things like Nissan Leafs and Zoes which are just on Renault Zoe there, £6,500. Nissan Leaf. So certainly, especially the second cars, certainly should be very viable. But again, I've had quite a lot of owners who say, well, I can't have that. I go to Norfolk twice a year to see my auntie. Well, I hire a car on that weekend. So
and you won't need
there's
to.
a lot of reasons where you can make it work, and they are cheaper. They are well under £10,000 for good, like mileage, alternatives to the normal family hatchback. They're not all the preserve of people who are allegedly wealthy and such like. So there's a lot of factors. We talked about affordability. I think that argument about them being expensive is really fairly easily dismissed, to be honest. I think by 2030, I think really very ready. The change is already happening now. In the last couple of years, we've seen a huge rise in demand here, and the depreciation curve of cars like Range Rovers, Land Rovers, I've struggled to place them now in some cases. So we're very ready. There's a couple of points to address, really. So I think at the moment, for a lot of people to adopt EVs, the difficulty at the moment are people that perhaps don't have off-street parking, live in flats. So there are solutions coming through for that. So yes, there's some situations there that can be discussed, addressed. You may not have parking at home. I do know owners who don't have any charging at home, and they use that Tesco once a week, or they stop at that rapid charger. The Audi down the road has a rapid charger in the car, so you shop for an hour, it's charged up another week. So there are ways around that. It's a case in point in some situations. Again, some commercial applications, we need a pickup truck for moving tyres and towing trailers. There is an alternative to that, so regrettably I have to have one for that. But for a lot of people, they really are a very viable alternative, can cost far less to run, be a real pleasure to own, and I really hope that we've addressed some of these sort of common concerns and questions. These are the most common ones that tend to come up when people at the early stages, or just dismissive. Like, if nothing else, I want people to just not be dismissive of it. Can't have it, like that chap there. No, not for me. No, definitely not. That would be the real reason. And I don't get that. I just don't get that. So hopefully we've answered some of those questions. We had a chat. We haven't met in person for a little while. So
it's been pre-COVID since we last caught up doing a talk to some students about some engineering students about EVs. Last time we saw each other earlier in the year. So we could do a few more of these, either in the live chat or the comments after it's finished. What you'd like to talk about? I'd like to understand more of the business side, because I think fleets and I think people buying through salary sacrifice and benefit in kind, at least here in the UK, could be a really big talk point. I don't really understand enough about. I'd like to understand more.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that's another topic. We've covered quite a lot. It's been quite a long live stream, this one. We had a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of those generic criticisms that always come up. Anything before we go? I don't think you see any obvious comments there.
Dan says you ship to Norwich. Well, I'm from Norwich. You can't tell. We don't speak like that anymore. All my family speak like that. No, nobody ships to Norwich. No one goes to Norwich. I'm from Norwich. No, it's I got some family to go and see at Christmas and New Year, COVID allowing, and that trip up the A11, M11, A11, I'll be delivering some cars for him.
we deliver cars for Randy. We do a lot of just online sales and delivering. There's a number of customers each week where the first time they've met me, us, the car is when I'm outside the house unloading it from a trailer. And so absolutely, delivery is no problem at all. And we've got one going out tomorrow morning, I think 2 going out on Monday, a couple of collections from here on Saturday. So it's still been really quite busy, even in the run up to Christmas now. So I hope that's useful. I think we should probably wrap things up now.
Yes.
And then we'll pick up any other comments later. Always open to questions, and really tune into Martyn's EV News Daily podcast. It covers a lot of these topics and then goes on something. It's fascinating to see where the latest news is. Proper news, real news, not fake news. So please, tune into Martyn's podcast. I really appreciate your time coming today. I hope that's been enjoyable for everybody. So we'll sign off now, and thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, and lots of more videos coming out. Probably every couple of days, 3 days, depends on how much time we have, but especially the Model 3 next week. Thank you.
We can end it now. This could go horribly wrong.
Yeah. I can't see these lights now, Martyn.
Right. We're going to try and click on this red one here. See what happens.